I'm so happy you could do this. Really though, because when I first met you and you told me your fertility doula, like my eyes
Yeah.
just lit up and I wanted to know everything. And so I just wanted to talk to you.
Thank you for asking me. I was
Yeah.
so honored. I'm like, yes, of course. That's so
So
neat.
I know I used to do this on Instagram Live and called it like coffee chat. So I don't know what this is going to be called, but
Okay.
um, yeah, we just sort of like we talked like fertility can be such a big thing and so many different avenues. So
Yeah.
I just want to kind of hear like what got you into this type of field. What I'm sure it's a lot,
No, it's good.
and like why you do what you do.
Yeah, it's always, I feel like this type of work, or really any soul meaningful work, is your own journey. It brings you there. So
Yeah.
I had my master's degree. I was working professionally as an auditor of all things.
Like a medical
And
auditor?
no, I did internal auditing for a couple different companies. I worked for local government, and then I worked for an international
Oh wow.
telecommunications company.
What a pivot.
I know. Yeah. So I was doing that, getting my master's, and started working, and then got married. And my husband's 11 years older than me, and we wanted to have kids right away. So, and I had no reason to think that like getting pregnant would be hard. I had regular periods. I'm a twin. So like I just,
You are?
yeah, I have a twin brother.
I have a twin brother.
Do you?
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that. That's
Oh
so wild.
like what? Did we just become best friends?
That's awesome. So yeah, like, so I just assumed that it would be easy. 2 years later, I still wasn't pregnant. And I had the classic, like, unexplained infertility. Like, all my labs were normal. My husband's sperm was fine. Like, no reason.
Which is more frustrating, I think.
It's
Because we
so
get a lot of people like
frustrating.
that too, honestly, who's like, I've been through what seems like everything
Yeah.
and I still have no answers.
And you just want answers. You feel like something's wrong with you, and that
How could you not?
right, like nobody can figure it out. And it makes your love life real funky.
I bet.
Yeah. So fast forward, I went through a few things, but I knew like IVF wasn't for us. So we thought about like adopting. We ended up getting pregnant, and then I had the best pregnancy, the best delivery, but I couldn't remove like that journey from my conscious. Like I just kept meeting people or friends and family who were then going through their own journey, and it was like, well, what did you learn? I just started helping people with their journey. And then fast forward to realizing that auditing was not my passion in life. And I was like, there's something bigger here.
It's like knowing you now, I cannot imagine that.
I mean,
like, what do you mean?
Yeah, knowing me now, anyway, it was just a job. But so then I was like, okay, well, I want to be, certified in some way. So found this certified fertility doula. And that was neat because I didn't know,
cool.
like, there's so many fertility disorders that I didn't have. So then I got to learn, like, PCOS, endometriosis, miscarriage, like the different things that I didn't go through. Then I got the education on. And now
That's great.
I do.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So I guess kind of like tell me like the doula aspect with it, because again, in I think the birth community, everybody's very familiar with the doula.
Yeah.
But everybody that's not within that, it's a little like, what do you mean? What is this person? This makes no sense to me. And so I know from just my own personal experience, doulas are the supportive figure in that way too, and a guide. But when it comes to like fertility doulas, I guess kind of where do those kind of blend?
Yeah. So I still struggle with having the label doula because it usually is a post being pregnant term. But the root of doula just means, I think it's Greek for like female supporter or
yeah. I was like, it's just a support person.
Yeah. So a fertility doula is specifically supporting women and couples who are on their path to becoming pregnant, whatever that looks like. And so the training and the education is there to support all fertility disorders or, lifestyle. But then I'm also trained in energy work with the chakras, and we like bring that usually into our sessions together. So I like to explain it to people like, I can come in when just meeting with your doctor is not enough. Or if you just have that inner feeling of like, I need more support here.
Which I think everybody should, to be honest, because it's a very lonely and isolating. I mean, it sounds like motherhood as a whole, every transition's isolating and lonely,
Yeah.
and like not really talked about until you're in it, which is just crazy to me. Um, yeah. So again, the energy wise that you're saying, I'm so intrigued with that too,
Mm-hmm.
because something I learned in school that just like blew my mind was it talked to us about like a living person versus a non-living, and it was like a philosophical question, like what's the difference? And all these questions and all these things come up, and it finally just got down to like energy, like your energy source is what makes you living, what doesn't, your soul, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I know, see, you're lined up
I'm
too.
like so
So
interested in that.
I was like, something I loved about chiropractic that it kind of bridged the gap of like the mind body soul connection,
Yeah.
which I know a lot of people kind of don't gravitate towards because they think straight biomechanical, which is fine, that's part of it. But there's like this beautiful triune. And so you bring that into, it sounds like fertility,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm so intrigued.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
I'm
you
like,
bring it into your work here with,
I bridge the gap with the science first, and then we start talking about it later.
yeah,
But
yeah.
because sometimes
It's,
people aren't ready to hear certain things,
mm-hmm.
and that's not my place as like a facilitator of your healing, right? Like I
Yeah,
can bring the info to you, but if you're not ready to start that journey, then that's not on me,
sure.
or not my, like I can't push it.
Right. And I think like on that note, a lot of times we don't know when we're ready for that part of the journey, but
Yeah.
there's something else that triggers it. So a lot of times like the lens I take is infertility is usually the thing that's triggering it. So if if we can't separate the mind and the body and the soul, they're all connected. And if your body is really trying to tell you something is not aligned, like infertility can be one of the ways it does that.
Yeah.
Um, I've talked with practitioners who work with like cancer or other things, and they have the same view of like it's just the thing highlighting that something's not aligned. So with infertility or fertility in general, I mean we can go there. So like if we talk about the chakras, the uterus is literally at the sacral chakra. It sits there. It's the physical space, and it's a big energy center. And it's responsible for creativity, but also like your relationship with yourself and others. So a lot of the times we get into if you feel like you are a people pleaser and you're always living for other people, or trying to make everybody happy, like you're using that energy out, but you're not replenishing it back in.
Yeah.
Or if you just feel like you're doing work, for me, like we're doing work that just doesn't bring you joy, and that's your relationship to the world, how you're identifying, and that's not aligned. It can then also, it's very close to the root chakra at the base of the spine, and the root chakra is where all of your like foundational beliefs that were laid by age 7 are housed.
It's like it sucks.
It's crazy. And it's,
you start developing yourself by age 4. And then,
yeah.
Yeah.
And so that is an opportunity. And I don't, we don't, with clients, it's not like every time we like dig into all of that.
No, there's a time and place.
Yeah. But sometimes
Yeah.
that is the thing that's either blocking the energy, or it's then the right moment for that person to like dig in there.
Totally.
So
I 1000% agree with that too.
yeah,
It's hard because again, like I told you, we do the neurological scans to kind of see, and we can see patterns of like certain stress within the body and nervous system. And there's times where there's like an emotional stress pattern that shows up, and it usually shows up around your sacrum, or all those kind of like restorative, repairing parts of your nervous system that you need to grow and create.
How do you do? I'm so curious. Like, how do you do that scan? Is it a machine?
It is kind of a machine.
Okay.
It is super easy, and it's totally non-invasive. You just have to get to the skin of your back, and it measures temperature for autonomic function from side to side, like measures how much energy output you're using to just kind of move through your day. And then it also measures vagal tone. So yeah, the kind of, again, output or manifestation of like your vagus nerve and what's going on with that too. And then you put it all together.
Science is so
I know.
cool.
like,
And I think that's
oh.
where like the fertility conversation in general in our culture
I feel like it's almost like
lacks.
too sciencey now, though.
Yeah.
Because it's more like, okay, yes, I understand we need to know about your cycle, but then there's so many women who don't really know what's normal in a cycle.
Yeah.
Or like, again, my doctor says everything's normal. And I'm like, well, is it common or is it just normal? Is it your normal?
Right.
Like, can we talk about that? Like, what is going on with these kind of things? And then it gets so like, okay, track, mark, do these things. And then it gets so much in your head that you're even more disconnected from your body now. So in a weird way, I'm like, how do we, I don't know how, but that balance is where I think you come in.
Yeah.
To be like, this is what we need to focus on, and this is where we can maybe put it in a different box for a different day.
Yes. Yeah. And take the overwhelm out. And
it's a lot.
It is a lot because we don't prepare women well.
No.
In, just in sex education as a whole, we're sorely lacking in that basic, understanding of what a female cycle is. All we talk about is like sex protection. We don't talk about changes in cervical fluid, the changes in hormones, like all of that.
All the things.
We just don't tell women.
Which is so mind-boggling to me because, again, like, I think not knowing that puts so much added pressure just on women in general. And, like, you're not the same person 28 days out of the month. Like, it changes, your body changes. And then I mean, most women are like their toughest critics. So then you're comparing to where you were like a week ago, but you're maybe ovulating and in like your best self you could ever be.
Yes.
And now you're starting to prep for your cycle and you're not going to feel good. Like,
right.
But then you think something's wrong with you. And it's like, that's not even the case. Your body is just going through its natural cycle.
Yeah.
And men don't have that. They have it on a 24-hour cycle. And so it's just like such a disconnect, really. Everything's so disconnected.
And we're so run by like a masculine society. And so I always tell, the idea of like having the same morning routine every day is not realistic for women. Like,
not usually.
Yeah.
Because like, to some degree. I just talked about, I did a stress webinar, and like, I'm a morning person, but I give myself enough grace to do what I know is going to fill my cup, but with like buffers of time. So I don't have to do it by 7 o'clock every day.
That's smart.
Well, I had to figure it out the hard way because getting burnt out myself.
Nobody. And I think that is like I see a shift.
And honestly, my journey started balancing my own hormones.
Oh, really?
And understanding like what I'm doing is not serving me. I need to make some changes.
How did you know your hormones were off?
I think my hormones were off my entire life, to be honest, ever since I got my cycle. And I feel like we're probably going into like generational stuff too. So my mom always had very, very painful cycles. From what I was told. After I was born, she had hysterectomy, so I never... I also never really saw what to do with a period, if that makes sense. And so, like, even for my first cycle, I had, like, again, labs and things were normal, but I had all the signs of endometriosis, like massive bleeding, clots, chunks of things. And so I was 12, and then middle school they wanted to put me in birth control. I tried it for a little bit. I said I didn't like it. My parents let me take that off. My parents did let me kind of guide my own way, which was nice. And it just kept being like, I'm just gonna, I guess, suck it up. We'll deal with it.
Wow.
That's all we really could do. My parents were always a little bit more like holistic minded, though. Like, we weren't big on medications.
That's nice.
Not that it was like a taboo, but it was just kind of like,
not the go-to.
It's here when you need it, but if you can. So, and that kind of sparked things. My cycle actually got better when I was in chiropractic school. I think being regularly adjusted so much.
Yeah.
And then moving out to California, got a little haywire again. Big life transition, and then we start the whole thing over.
And isn't that wild? Like, just on that note, the big transitions, like we talk a lot about stress and impacting the cycle. And yet, as women, we minimize our stress so much.
Oh, I tell people here, that's a lot, but I didn't do it to myself.
Right. And so we think like, oh, we're just moving, or we just got married. And like, that's a huge shift. And that's
even if it's good shifts, like there's still stress with it. There's good and bad stress, right? There's eustress. Like,
right.
Yeah, there's good and bad stress. Gravity is a good stress, but there's still effects over time that can come from that.
And we don't see them as stressors, or we think like, oh, this shouldn't be stressing me out.
Yeah.
And it is. And that's okay. right? And but just learning how to manage it, or just acknowledging like this is a lot right now, and that's okay. So
love it. That's like
yeah.
that's the hardest thing, I think.
So how I'm so curious. Like, how did you end up in Cairo school? Did you always know that's what you wanted to do?
No. So I have three brothers. Growing up, one of my brothers was diagnosed with brain tumors, and he was
Wow.
in and out of the hospital, basic like my whole childhood.
Wow.
And so when with his story, again, we learned so much and kind of just went through a lot. And then in high school, my boyfriend at the time, his dad was a chiropractor, and now knowing what I now what I know now.
Knowing what you know now.
There you go. I was like, that was a hard one.
There's a lot of in there.
Thanks. Um, I went to see him because I threw my back out in volleyball at like 15, and I could not get off the floor and walk.
Oh no.
And again, my parents were like, "What do you want to do?" I'm like, "Well, if I go to the hospital, they're just gonna give me pain meds. Like, I don't think anything's broken. I can move." And I don't know where this thought. I was like 15, so I don't know why I thought I knew all this.
Your soul was like,
I guess I
here we
was like,
go.
"No, it doesn't mean it." So then I went to them, and I knew it's also a small town in Reno, so I knew his stepdad for years prior, and he talked to me about the nervous system and so he is stressed, and it was just like so easy, it clicked. And I was like, okay, yeah. And he's like,
Yeah.
any questions? I was like, no, makes total sense.
Mhm.
And then they gave me a care plan too, put me through it, and told me what to expect through this whole process, and it just clicked, and I loved it.
Yeah.
And then they offered me a job like 6 months later.
Oh, that's neat.
Yeah. And then kind of I worked there for like 5 years basically, all the time till I went to school. And so I originally thought I wanted to be a pediatrician. Got to job shot out of the hospitals, and I hated it. I was like, I think I got in a fight with the nurse at like 16. I was so angry at how they were treating like the families and the kids. And then I was like, well, maybe I could do this with kids, because they had kids with like cerebral palsy and like all these other, more serious health things. And then I made my transition.
That's such a beautiful
And
story.
then, yeah, later they talked to me about like emotional stress.
Yeah.
And again, the part of my body that literally just stopped working, it just shut down, was from probably emotional stress.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But nobody else would have told me that.
Right.
And honestly, he didn't tell me. He let me get to it.
And nobody's giving us tools,
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it was later in my journey when my son was like 2 that I remembered, like, I had a lot of childhood trauma that came back up. And that's when I was like, it was a miracle I ever even got pregnant because of,
Not funny, but it's just like, oh.
Yeah, like, oh, this is a lot to work through. But having a little one, this will happen in motherhood too. Like, if you have trauma when your child reaches that age, you can be triggered.
Totally.
So it was like, oh, now I get it, and like now's the time to work on it.
You're just like, oh, here we
Here we are. So it's just, like different opportunities will bring stuff out. And I feel like,
yeah,
that's how your journey led you.
Totally. But I mean, I even think of it the more I know, because again, like kind of like you said, your journey kind of makes you learn along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And learning, like, again, when we're born with all the eggs we're ever going to have, and it's eggs from our lineage as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that was a huge click for me with like generational trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I'm like, oh, my mom has had these things, and somehow I'm having it too, even though there's no similarities between like the traumas, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So like, do you do, I don't know, that has to also apply to men, but I guess I know. Yeah. I was like, it has to, right?
Yeah. It's so fascinating. Like, I have a couple clients coming to mind where I typically work with the woman first, naturally.
It's crazy. We do that here most of
Yeah.
We love all our dads. They are great.
Yes. And the couples usually, like supportive of one another. And it's like when,
you probably do attract that too, like having partners that are supportive. Because with us too, if someone's coming for fertility, I'd use like point blank, I'd like to get your partner in here.
So smart.
So we can get you both taken care of for this.
So smart. And it's usually when things like we go through the different areas and we're not finding anything, then I'm like, let's talk. to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And there can definitely be energetic blocks on the male side as well, among other lifestyle things.
Oh, totally.
But when I work with couples, we talk about like the body first, because if there's something going on in the body,
structurally, if there's just any issue or like physical issue that's causing something, like even just like your uterus shapes not being the most supportive, or PCOS and
yes,
fibroids or things, like we need to know about those too, because that has an impact.
You're right. If your cycle's not working right, then this whole thing's going to be harder than
first let's balance and regulate, and then we'll work on those.
And then we dig into like emotional body and spiritual body. So but it can definitely be on the male side for sure.
So I guess when it comes to like cycle stuff, what is it that you see as being more, I guess, like, or what would like trigger you to know that it's more of like maybe a spiritual energetic blockage versus like a physical one, based off like maybe certain symptoms? I hate the word symptoms, but
right. I mean,
they guide us. I know.
Yeah, that's what they are. That's a good question. So usually when all labs are normal, which we also dig into because
there's a range.
Whether you're having them tested, the right hormones tested and tested at the right time is a big deal.
Which I know a lot of people don't know that.
Right.
Which, like, on day 3 of your cycle, you're going to want to get certain things tested versus, I don't know, I'm snowballing that day, like day 12. But
yeah, absolutely. Spot on. And, even if, because like things like thyroid are connected to your fertility, gut health. And if those come back, but like, did we do a full thyroid test? But tracking your cycle in the way that we track it, so we do like body temperature and cervical fluid and cervix position, will also tell us those things. So I can look at somebody's chart and just see like you have a low thyroid, or your estrogen's too high, your progesterone's too low, like whatever. It's amazing what the body tells us.
The body doesn't lie.
It doesn't.
Like, it's telling you what's going on if you'll just listen.
Right. But we don't know how to listen to it.
No.
So I feel like that was my biggest frustration.
You had to go to get certified. I had to go to grad school.
Yeah.
Right. So something we're innately born with, I had to go learn about somewhere else.
Yeah, and nobody's telling us. So those things, like just looking at someone's cycle and just seeing, will tell me a lot. And like we've talked about, like having painful, long, heavy periods, right, is also a sign. And when we then adopt like what I call a fertility lifestyle, so doing the things that we know scientifically are going to promote hormone health, hormone balance, getting great sleep, managing stress, all of those things, when those don't work, that's when we got to dig deeper. So typically I'm working with people for like 3 months to see what's going on.
I love it. That's a minimum too, to really like get a pattern of what's happening.
Yeah.
Like, you're doing a disservice, I guess anywhere, like you're doing a disservice if you're going to go like, okay, I'm going to try for like a month and see what happens, because you just don't have enough info.
Yeah. And it feels like at first, like that seems like a long time.
It's not.
Over the course, right? It's not.
I can't believe we're in February.
I know. Isn't it wild?
And I'm like, okay, March is in a week.
Like, right? It's already summer.
That's how it feels. Okay, I gotta get my garden. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't have a garden, but
flies. So,
lifestyle wise, I'm so curious, because I think I saw on your website that you have a lot of like nutritional stuff. Yeah. And so that's like one of the first things I talk about with my women here is like, what is your diet looking like? And I know nutrition is kind of this another big thing that like has no guidance.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, most medical doctors don't have any nutritional education, which is sad.
Right.
Like, they're just not required to for some reason.
Right.
So like one of the first things I talk to women about is like, okay, like as simple as it is, like, are you eating breakfast?
Huge.
And they're like, well, no. And I'm like, okay, well, okay. Like, why? Let's start there. And then is it a diet thing? Are you trying to do the intermittent fasting, which I hate for women?
Right.
Or are you not hungry? Because that tells me we have high levels of cortisol in our system if you wake up not hungry. And then a crash and stuff. And then so I'm more of like, we have to regulate your blood sugar to get your hormones in a safe environment, which I think is what your nutrition stuff is about. Okay, so tell me a little about your nutrition stuff.
Yeah, no, totally spot on. Like, it's with the lack of understanding of hormones in general, there then comes a lack of understanding of how food can support your hormones. So it's not hard. It's just that we just don't know.
Totally.
We're not
That's why I'm
told.
like trying not to like stigmatize anybody either too, because we just don't know, and you're told 8 different things of what is actually needed.
Right. And what we want is sold to us. So
Yeah.
if we want to lose weight, feel great in our body, all those things are going to be sold to us in this
Yeah.
social media package that is not supporting hormones.
Vegan's better, carnivore diet's better, keto. And I'm like, do you have to put a label on it?
Right.
It's like,
yeah. And that comes back to like my biggest, so I'm definitely a believer in food as medicine and listening to your body. Because what works for one body doesn't work for all bodies.
yeah.
And so with food, there's a couple different like buckets I like to think about. One, what you're eating, but then also how you're eating it and when you're eating it. So on the what you're eating, a lot of people are like, well, what do I eat? You know, we want the list. And I have that, right? Like I have a full cookbook.
Want the hows. We want to be the action. Let's go.
Yeah. Like tell me
Yeah.
exactly what to eat and I'll eat it. So it's the things like obviously cutting out toxins from your food if you can, you know, eat whole foods rather than packaged foods. Be aware of the processed sugars and all of the things. Like the more holistic you can put in is what you're going to get out, which is a big shift for many busy
It really is.
people. Like it's hard to do that.
It's really hard. It takes a lot of prep and things to do that.
Mhm.
And sometimes a lot of people are like, I want nutrition help. And I'm kind of like, we all know that you shouldn't like eat just that like toxic processed food. Like we all know that.
Yeah.
I get lifestyle wise, that's not the easiest. So like you said, the hows, like, it sounds like you should break it down and make it really simple.
Yes, because I want it to get done. Because in order for it to be realistic, it has to be, you know?
Yeah.
So
I say just start again with most women because I'm like, it's a lot. Don't worry about it. Just add more protein and more healthy fat.
yes.
Those 2 things, and you will immediately see benefits in everything. Your hormones need fat to synthesize.
Yes.
Your brain needs fat.
Yes.
It's not bad, but you just need to do that, and then you need protein to help it get to those places.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And
then
sustain your blood sugar. But
add some cruciferous veggies to flush things out.
yeah.
And we're good to go.
Moved to California now. I love kale, which is so funny.
Isn't it funny? Yeah. That's awesome.
Like I would never. And I'm like, it's a little in there.
Just put it on everything and an avocado on top and you're good
yeah,
to go.
we're fine.
Where are you from? Reno?
Yeah, good old Reno.
It's different. We lived in Oregon for a while and it's wild. Like it was a good experience because I got to see like we have access to all the things all the time. Like all the greens, all the herbs, all the fruit, where other parts don't.
Yeah, that's not the reality.
Yeah.
So like very fortunate in that way.
Yeah. And it takes a little more planning, but it can be done even if you don't live here. So then on the how, it's like, are you eating when you're like in the car, in your commute, stressed out? Like your body's not going to
it's not in a it's not a state to be in that growth place.
Right. So a lot of times what I encourage people to do is like listen to their digestion. Are you feeling gassy, bloated after eating? Are you constipated? Are you having regular bowel movements? All of that will tell you a lot about your nutrition. But we don't talk about it, you know?
Oh, I talk about it every visit. I think people come in for their first appointment and are like, I did not expect to like get this detailed. Because I'm like, how many times do you have a bowel movement a day?
Right. Are you having one?
They go normal. I'm like, okay, what's normal? Like once every other day. I love that that's probably a point that you've gotten to, like beneficially. That is not normal.
That's not what we're looking for.
Do you eat every day? Yeah. Okay, you should minimum.
Right.
Like,
get it out.
Yeah. Yeah. So now we know there's obviously like there's some imbalance right now. Let's try to figure that out.
Well, and that brings something
and also like you said, detoxing wise.
Yes.
Your bowels are a natural way to detox. If you're not detoxing, those are going to go somewhere else into your system because they can't get out.
And like estrogen specifically is one that will be reabsorbed in the colon. So if you are not eliminating and I
was like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Right. So
it's made in your
dominance is typically constipation is a sign or linked to.
I think one of the earliest like signs of pregnancy is constipation.
So
or bowel changes.
Yes. And so
I was like, I forgot, but yes, you're right. 1,000%.
Yeah. So nutrition is it's big and it's an easy bucket where we can do a lot. We can go into things like seed cycling, which are there's
That
different
can be a lot too.
nutrients, yeah, in different seeds that can support hormones. Even getting enough water in, right? There's just like little things that you can tweak for both male and female fertility. This is a great place to start. So I'm big on nutrition.
I think I just saw, I got to look it up more, but I know it was believed more that male like sperm turnover was like 4 to 6 weeks. And I think it's actually shown that it's longer now
Mm-hmm.
for things to actually like show in the sperm or like lifestyle wise. Like if you're drinking,
Yeah,
eating poorly, it's going to take.
definitely takes closer to like 3 months.
That's what I think.
Yeah,
But it just is like, oh,
because sperm is generated, I don't know the exact like average, but it's about every 70 days
okay.
from like generation to then being used. So yes, men are making or have sperm every day, but where that sperm started was about 3 months ago.
Yeah.
So
And I think first I found out like the egg that's this month happening was starting a year ago.
yeah,
That process,
yeah,
which blows my mind. So it's like that preconception journey. Like I know it sounds like a lot, but we're like start way before you even think.
right. And that's yeah, I think
Yes.
yes, just yes, yeah. And that's where like no pressure, but everything you're doing
Mm-hmm.
is contributing. And that's the thing, the fertility system is impacted by all of the systems. And it's also the first to shut down. So if you think about like the proverbial being chased by a lion,
Talk about it all the time.
right? It's the first thing your body's going to do is stop your reproductive system because you cannot be making a baby while running from a lion. So it's like, like if we think about it that way, it's like everything in your environment is impacting. So that's people ask like, well, what's the one thing?
There's not really one thing.
Right.
We can start at one thing.
Yeah.
And like maybe start a foundation to build on, which is great.
Mm-hmm. But it's not just one thing.
No. Which like that's what we do here is looking at, the stress responses within your nervous system.
Yeah.
Which is why I love that you say it too. Like the reproductive is like the number one thing that's going to shut down. And then it obviously your digestion, your immune function, because those things aren't inherently needed to survive in a like short time span.
Right.
Which I don't think a lot of people make that connection. And even then they're like, well, there's no lion. So why? And I was like, well, it doesn't really matter if it's physically there or not. If you're still scared about a lion, your body's in that zone.
Yes.
Again, that mind body connection. And so getting you out of that stressful zone is going to kind of be the best way to get you into that parasympathetic or reparative, restorative part that we can do.
Yeah, I was so annoyed, for lack of a better term, on my journey of like, everybody said, just relax. Or
oh my God, just have a glass of wine and go on vacation.
Yes.
It'll happen.
Yeah.
And you're like, if it was that easy, don't you think I would have?
Right. And I was like so resentful, but I really believe that where people are coming from is
it's
like
a good place.
It's a good place. And it's also like understanding that being high stress and being an overachiever and being all the things is actually contributing. But as a type A person, I was just like, no, I have it all under control. I can handle this much stress. I don't need, to meditate and do yoga and all that stuff. But like, I really was needing that, at least something to be managing my stress better.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Like same thing. I can do it.
All.
And I don't know who says like, but do you have to? And I was like, I didn't expect to be attacked today, but like,
right. Back off.
Yeah. Like, okay. So yeah, I think that was the hardest shift for me coming out of like burnout basically is understanding that like I didn't have to be doing so much that I was doing, even though like it was what I wanted. And like what did fill my soul though, but it was like, okay, we need to shift some things. Which is hard.
Which is a whole other conversation.
I was like, it's hard.
It is so hard. And that's like most of the people I work with are that. Like they're the business owners or the professionals, and whether you want it or not, you have a lot on your plate. And how you're managing that can help or hurt your fertility.
Yeah. I have to remind myself and even a lot of just not even mom, dads, everybody here, like rest is productive. It's more productive than I think it gets credit for, but you can't always be in like this moving forward pace.
Right.
We're not designed to do that. Women especially are not designed to do it. Men a little bit more so, but like we're just not designed. So you're going against nature. Like even nature has cycles.
Right.
Where
It's
it's
so
like,
beautiful.
yeah, like winter's that time to rest and recover, and then spring you kind of start prepping and planning, and then summer it's like
Game on. And
yeah.
then we do it all over again.
So it's
Yeah.
like we expect and see these things in nature, but we don't really give us like our own permission to do that. I see, and
Yeah.
it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
But then also like the guilt if you're like resting, you're like I should be doing something else.
Yes. Is wild. So permission to rest is really important.
It's a good one.
It is a good one. It's really important.
I was wondering if you could go over a little bit of like IUI versus IVF, and like kind of when would that be, like the options? Because again, from our experience here, a lot of the little ones that we see who have come from like an IVF journey, lots of emotional stress, chemical stress, physical stress, and like we can start to see effects of that once they are Earthside. So it's always, yeah, like a whole other conversation. But it's also like if we don't have to get to that point, so mom, baby, family doesn't have to struggle through those challenges too.
Question being like IVUI versus IVF.
Yeah.
Right. So, while like ideally the body would function and get natural, like pregnant naturally all on its own, sometimes that's not realistic, for so many reasons. But either way, if you're using assisted reproductive technology, which would be the bucket of these sciences, it just needs to be the right choice for you and your partner first and foremost. It's not for everybody. But if it is, then the difference between the two, so IUI, intrauterine insemination,
Thanks.
is when they take the sperm and they spin it so that it's like the most potent form of that sperm possible. Okay. And then they inject that into the uterus during ovulation. So typically a woman is put then on synthetic hormones to induce ovulation.
Okay.
So ovulating, they put sperm in, and then hold your breath and hope that conception happens. That's IUI. IVF is where both sperm and the egg are extracted. An embryo is created outside the body and then put back in for implantation. So both are like technologies to support the chance of getting pregnant. Neither is foolproof. And as you know, like people have long journeys with both.
Yeah.
They can work right away though too. So when, if this is part of somebody's journey, it looks a variety of ways for everybody.
I'm sure you could like go so far.
Yeah.
And then you're like, I guess I'm trying to say keep it somewhat general.
Yeah. But I mean, it's important, I think, for people to know the difference. Typically, doctors will start with IUI and recommend, I've seen up to like 6 rounds of that before moving to IVF. IVF is a much more invasive procedure, having to retrieve eggs, and the female is on a lot of different hormones to basically create a cycle.
And I don't think a lot of people know going into IVF, like the toll it's going to just take on your body as a whole, because it's kind of become very like normalized for us to go to that, and it's like, oh well, if you don't, we'll just start it. But it's like you get put on bed rest before and after. The people don't know, I think, with that like again the toll and the stuff that you can't walk, you can't move, you can't do anything, and then you do usually need your partner, some supportive person there to help you through things, because it's not a simple procedure. Like it's no,
it's definitely not. And people's reaction to it is very different, right? There's a range of like how the body can respond, and also just being on the synthetic hormones is another, like I've had clients feel very out of body with that, like just feeling a lot of like anxiety or different emotions that are totally induced by having those hormones added in, which not a lot of people prepare you for. I have seen clinics getting better at providing support. So if this is part of somebody's journey, I really encourage you to have a team of support.
Yeah.
So whether that's like an acupuncturist and a therapist and a fertility doula, like, but you're gonna need a whole team because it's a lot.
I wish we could just like normalize like preconception teams.
Right.
Because like we have a birth team,
We do. Yeah.
and then postpartum comes and you talk about your tribe, which is a different subject for a different day. But
Yeah.
like you also need postpartum team.
Mm-hmm.
That's like my number one area where I feel like we don't give moms enough support, but
yeah.
as a
Yes.
whole.
So yeah, I don't know. I feel like you're right. IVF could be
It can be a lot.
a whole conversation, but
But I know there's probably some people who are either thinking that's their options,
Mhm.
that's where they're going to, or their doctors have just already kind of flat out said, like, we're just going to do that anyway. Like, let's not waste time.
I've seen it work so many different ways, right? Like I've seen that where it's like, are we getting to the root cause? No, but for some people, it's
It's,
it's what they want.
mm-hmm.
And it can work. I think that's the other hard part is like we get in the mind a lot about like, ooh, this is going to be hard because I'm doing IVF. It doesn't have to be hard.
That's true.
Like, so that's another reason why having the support can really help. Like, even just with the mindset part of it.
So with you specifically, and then like when you do have clients that, become pregnant or like they get the happy news,
Mm-hmm.
do they just stop?
Working with me?
Yeah. Like,
Yeah, I usually work
or
with
do you
people
carry them through their
through their
process?
first
Okay.
trimester.
Okay.
Yeah, especially,
That makes more sense to me.
yeah,
But
especially with people who've had loss or some type of, IVF or some part of their journey where it feels a little bit out of their control. There's a lot of fear that comes in that
yeah.
first trimester. And there's a lot, scientifically and statistically that can happen in that first trimester. So having the support is a big win. Um, and then once into the second trimester, typically I transition people to a birth doula,
Okay.
which is a good time to do that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So yeah, they didn't like bye.
Right. We are trying to find the
And not
next
in a negative way, but
set.
I'm sure they're like, oh, like hard line in the sand. Now I'm
Right.
in here, like do because I'm sure like they've been through this whole process. They don't want to just be like, bye, Jess.
Right. No.
I wouldn't.
Yeah. And it's usually, yeah, like there's a lot more we can do, even once you're pregnant, to prepare for what's
It's
going
so
to
funny.
come.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So and then too, like you have I went and creeped through your website because I was just curious with everything. But like you have programs that look like
Mm-hmm.
and things. Is that like preconception with Jess, if that makes sense? Like
Yeah.
things you can do prior to that point, or
Yeah. It's so fun. I'm like redoing the website right now. So I'm like, wait, what
oh
did you
yeah, new
say?
year, new everything.
It's under construction. But yeah, so there's a few ways to work with me. I do have a free cycle tracking course. So we talked earlier
Oh
about
gosh, I love that.
the cycle. So it's truly information I wish every woman had. And
I try, but I don't get to see people too long, and it's kind of like it's just people don't know.
right, we don't know. It wasn't until a year into my journey that I even knew cervical fluid changed. Like I had no idea about ovulation. I just thought, anyway, you could just be pregnant. And on that, like there's only a 20% chance on a regular cycle to get pregnant because you can only get pregnant during ovulation.
Yeah,
Nobody tells you.
nobody tells you.
It's just not common knowledge. So because of that, I have a whole free course um, teaching how to identify when you ovulate. It is geared, I'll say, it is geared for people who are trying to get pregnant, but the information would benefit any woman
I
with
think
a
if
cycle.
anybody thinks they're gonna want a family, like start tracking your cycle.
Mm-hmm.
That's my thing. Like if even if you think it's like 5 years down the road, just like start knowing your body
Yes.
and knowing when things are happening.
Mm-hmm.
Because even here, I'm like, do you have an ovulation test? Do you know how to read it?
Right.
Do you know like when you should do that? It's not like a pregnancy test.
And it can change. I think that's a big misconception of like, I always ovulate on day 14. Like, you might.
Ish.
And then when something happens, like
Ish.
when you're moving to California, like that's going to change. Or if
Yeah.
you get sick. And so there's having the tools to know when you're ovulating is really helpful.
That's when like understanding again like the signs your body's putting out
Yeah.
that you're having this and like again getting more connected with yourself so you know okay around these times and stuff. Like you don't
Mhm.
have to be so dependent on like all the extra stuff at that point,
Yeah,
like the testing strips and
right. A lot of people ask,
thermometers
like,
and
what's
stuff.
your favorite app? What's your favorite test? And I'm like, I don't have one because you don't need it.
Yeah.
Like you can just do it all by yourself. And I also have a
Yeah.
saying that, like, it's not you, it's your cycle. Because when you know your cycle, like, you can then explain, like, oh, this is why I'm feeling this way, or this is what's going
Yeah.
on for me this week. So there's that. I also have a full fertility program that is for people who are trying to get pregnant.
Okay.
So it goes, there's 5 modules. There's the cycle tracking, but also the nutrition and the lifestyle. We do mindset work, we do feminine energy work, and it's kind of an
I'm like,
all, yeah, it's
I
like
love it.
it's everything I wish I had when I was trying. And that is, I love that program because instead of searching online endlessly,
Just scouring all the things you know, which is why I wanted
all
to
the
do this
things.
because I'm like, an Instagram post is fine and that can get
Mm-hmm.
you like some guidance. But when you're in that mode and you're trying to find answers, like just having someone talk to you about it is the easiest.
And like a trustworthy source, it's really hard online to find info that you're like, is this legit or not? And
Yeah.
coming from somebody who is a guinea pig and I like to try everything, like you can try something that's just not for your body. So the course is all research based information that is neutral, right? Like we're not going crazy, but you're going to have the foundation that you need for,
Sounds like it's specific enough and to get that like good foundation
yeah.
from what you're describing. Oh, I love that. And that's on your website, right?
Yes.
Yeah, because I was like, I'm pretty sure I saw it.
Yep.
But
It's on there. It's called Empower Your Path to Pregnancy. And it is that full course. Plus it comes with live Q&A support from me.
oh
So,
wow.
and the idea is like for you to be able to identify your root cause through the course of like, okay, this might be going on. And then we can talk about it further.
Oh,
And then, of course, I do private clients as well. So, um, for whatever reason, if some people just
I'm just like
prefer,
so in awe. I'm like, I could see how this could be like you're a counselor, you're a nutritionist,
it's so funny because I thought for
like
a
a
long
woman's health
time,
provider, like all of the things, which
yeah,
I'm sure it doesn't feel like you wear all those hats all the time, but like you are.
it is. It can be really tricky to explain to people what I do.
Yeah, because it probably is. It's not. You're not in one box all the time.
Mm-hmm. And I thought for a long time of going and getting like a therapy license because sometimes it feels like that.
Because you just it would help.
Right. But
I'm the
this
same way. I'm like,
is
I'm gonna take a Reiki course just because it can't hurt.
right.
I'm
It's
not
like
gonna.
gonna help.
Yeah, it's gonna help. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
be like I'm a Reiki practitioner, but like,
But now I have this knowledge.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
I resonate with that.
yeah, it's like and that's like the nice things. Like I'm always pulling in. Like what else can I know to support somebody's journey? And that's where the one-on-one really highlights that. So all of my one-on-one clients, like there is no set script. It is all about what you need in that moment on that day. And it's always different. And we work together on getting you where you want to go.
I
So
love that though.
it is wonderful work. I love it. I love all my clients so much. Just being, it's such an honor to be invited into somebody's like very personal part of their journey.
Yeah,
And just to see the outcomes, it's wonderful.
1000%. Again, I try to tell like anytime I've hired somebody or something, I try to tell like we are a very big community here.
Yeah.
And I don't say it just to like say it to put on like I don't know, put a board or something for like, oh, we're a community driven practice, but we really are. So like if you don't have the
Mm-hmm.
heart for people, like this isn't going to be the fit.
Yeah.
Because we do get invited to births or baby showers,
Yeah.
bridal showers, like all these like fun things in your life, and I don't take that for granted at all to be like welcomed into something so special.
Yeah. It's
So
such a special, I don't know what other
I
word
know,
to
I'm like, it's
use.
just nice.
It's so nice.
It's so cool.
It's so cool. And I really wish, like, I always think, like, I wish I had someone and I didn't. And that's okay because now I get to do this work. But it's really nice to be able to support people when they need it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so happy you came talk to me. Thank you.
Thank you
I was
for
like, we can keep
having
talking,
me.
but I was like,
I know.